I'm Paul Turner, one of the leaders of the Estuary Elim Church, and this is my thought for the day. I have recently had a cataract removed from my right eye, and I was totally amazed by the immediate difference it made to my eyesight. I've been finding it increasingly difficult to see, even with my one good eye. If I shut my left eye, the good one, I couldn't see anything at all. But then, even with it open, I was experiencing difficulties. Following the operation, everything changed. Suddenly, I could see in 3D again. To be honest, up until that moment, I hadn't even realised that I'd lost the 3D effect. I thought I had normal vision, just impaired. Yet in comparison to what I could see now, I realised I'd been seeing in closer to 2D, or at least that's what it seemed like to me. I just didn't know it. It was only when with proper 3D vision restored that it became blatantly obvious to me. I guess it was because the loss had happened slowly and over a period of time, and I just got used to it and thought that what I had with one eye was normal vision. But now I could see properly with both eyes. I remember sitting in the recovery room and holding both of my hands in front of my face, and I couldn't get over what I could see. The immediate effect was similar to my wearing 3D glasses in the cinema. It took a while for my brain to adjust to what I was now seeing. Everything was clearer, brighter, and more vibrant. As an artist who loves colours and hues, I was taken back by this unexpected revelation. Years ago, I'd been a hospital chaplain and visited patients in an eye ward, and they had told me their own experiences. Indeed, one woman who had come to the hospital to have her second cataract done had taken great joy in telling me how she had to have a whole new wardrobe of clothes because she now didn't like the colours. So I suppose I really should have known it would be dramatic for me too. But I have to be honest and admit I couldn't have been listening to her very well, because I was in no way prepared for this new reality. All I can say is a big thank you to the surgeon and the nurses, etc., who performed the operation, were involved in it, and a big thank you to God for giving them the knowledge. I was reminded very much of the words of that great hymn by John Newton. I'm sure you know it. Amazing Grace. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was blind, but now I see. What wonderful words. Now, he's not talking about being literally physically blind, of course. He's talking about being spiritually blind. But the effect is the same, isn't it? The point being that when John Newton was spiritually blind, he had no idea at all of how blind he really was, just like I had no idea about how much vision I had really lost physically. He thought he could see as well as the next man and lived his life accordingly, albeit selfishly, which of course he could if the next man was also spiritually blind. And then we get that incongruous picture of the blind leading the blind. I remember hearing the story of a blind golfer being pushed into accepting a challenge for money from a sighted golfer. Eventually, the blind golfer reluctantly agreed, but only if the competition was at 10 o'clock at night. It's more of a level playing field, maybe. If I had not had my cataract dealt with, eventually my eyesight would have gone completely. It struck me that if we're not careful, our spiritual vision can be the same. If we keep pushing God away, we can end up being spiritually blind. So blind that no matter how hard you look, you still can't see anything. The Apostle Paul spoke about those with spiritual blindness in this way. He said, they are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to their hardness of heart, which suggests we actually do it to ourselves. And this was certainly John Newton's situation. John Newton was the captain of a slave ship. He was an investor in slave ships. And he was not a very nice man at all. He was rough and foul-mouthed. He was violent. He was an abuser, particularly of slaves, a blasphemer, and disliked even by his own crew. On one occasion, they even tried to kill him. He would seem to have been about as far away from God as he possibly could be. He thought he was living life and seeing life as it was, grabbing life by the neck and throttling it until it gave him what he wanted. But in reality, he was wrong, because his spiritual eyesight was all wrong. He just didn't know it until the moment he had his eyes opened, when in 1748, during a violent storm, when his ship was in severe danger of sinking and him drowning along with everyone else on board, John Newton cried out for God to save him. And he found Christ as his saviour. And it was then and only then that he saw the reality of his spiritual blindness and appalling sin. He became aware of God's amazing grace, of God's love and forgiveness, even for him, a slave trader. He saw it, as it were, for the first time and in glorious 3D colour, and it changed his life forever. And that's why he penned the words later on in his life, "Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was blind, but now I see. I was lost, but now I'm found." Jesus once said, "The eye is the lamp of the body." So if your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. Again, he's speaking of spiritual things. Today we sing songs in church like, "Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. I want to see you." My own experience made me wonder what it would be like for someone who had been born blind and to suddenly see for the first time. It must be truly amazing. Which in turn made me think of the moment that Jesus healed the eyes of a blind man in Mark chapter 8. Now, I'm not sure if the man was actually born blind on this occasion, but I was struck by what happened. Jesus actually spat on the man's eyes. Can you imagine that? And he put his hands on him. And then Jesus asked him, "Do you see anything?" The man looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." And once more, Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. And then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. What a moment! I can imagine that the man couldn't care less whether Jesus had spat on his eyes or not, because now he could see. Let me tell you, friends, Jesus might not be spitting on your eyes today. That was particular to this man, and I'm sure you're glad about that. But he knows exactly what is needed to open your eyes so that you can see clearly. It was only after I became a Christian myself that I became aware that God had already been involved in my life in order to bring me to that point. On the night that I became a Christian, I discovered that the caretaker's wife at my old school had been praying every night for me for a long time because I had been her paper boy. And I think it's no coincidence that I got saved in her church, a church that was miles away from where we both lived. Maybe today, Even as you listen to this thought for the day, you are considering spiritual things. And maybe it's for the first time. I want to suggest to you that Jesus is touching your life. He's speaking to you. And like he did to the blind man, he's asking you, do you see anything? Now, you might respond, well, yeah, I'm beginning to, but at best it's only 2D. I'm not seeing very clearly. I don't understand it all. I'm not too sure. I still have a lot of questions. Firstly, let me say it's okay to have a lot of questions. In fact, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. And secondly, God will bowl you over again and again as you start your journey with him and discover his answers to those questions. Let me suggest to you that maybe it's time for you to ask Jesus to touch your eyes again. I believe he's touching them right now. But to touch your eyes again so that you can see in 3D.